Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're joined here tonight in the studio by Ambassador Souad Shalaby, the former Assistant Foreign Minister and an expert in the Egyptian African affairs. Your Excellency, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Ambassador Shalaby, now, there's so many things we want to talk about, and we'll focus as well mainly on the relationship between Egypt and the Arab and African countries in specific. But before doing that, the presidency and the president himself has been meeting and making trips to India, the president of Croatia, Uzbekistan today as well. And I mean, he's touring the whole world. And we've seen the meetings and the visits to the UAE and Dubai last week as well. Now, it seems that Egypt is not just strengthening its relations with the African neighbors that has been high on the agenda for a few years now, but really touching on and tapping in a lot of the Eastern countries, smaller European countries, in times of political developments and changes taking over the whole world. How would you rate and evaluate and assess this sort of president's visits and the foreign affairs file so far?
Well, as you know, that the Egyptian foreign policy has always been a balanced foreign policy. Mm-hmm. That means it's a non-aligned policy, and it does not tilt towards the east or west, and it has its own way of dealing with problems, whether it is multilateral or bilateral. Mm-hmm. So taking the decision to open up with countries that we have not been having so much close relationship is a very good step at this point in time, because, as you know, Egypt is a leader, and in the regional, in the Middle East and in our region as Africa and the Arab world, Egypt is playing a very strong role as a leader and as a it takes initiatives. Egypt always takes initiatives, mm-hmm. and this is a very important part of its foreign policy, that it is its initiatives. We have relations with every single country in the world. We have more than 150 embassies around the world. So we have to make use of these relationships with even Latin America, which is another world of its own, mm-hmm. but we still have been always having strong relationship in even the multilateral diplomacy, when mm-hmm. in the UN and in other conferences. We always keep this balance.
Mm-hmm. Your Excellency, now it seems that, I mean, we're 4 days away from the first anniversary of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, and we've seen an unannounced visit by President Joe Biden today to the capital, the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, which is a sign that this conflict is going to escalate and it's not going to fade away or end anytime soon. And all of our visits and all of our relationships, the foreign relationships between Egypt and the rest of the world, they focus mainly on economic, military, and political cooperation. Now, when we meet and really strengthen the relations with other countries, are we looking for more of economic cooperation, since this conflict is taking its toll on the energy file, the food file as well? Or are we also looking to enhance political relations that could shift one side to the other in terms of Egypt's interests politically?
Well, it's both, and it's even more cultural also. Mm-hmm. You can add cultural, because as I heard in the first report, that the Uzbeks who used to come to Azhar to get their education. So yes. As I said also, that Egypt had a strong relationship with many countries, mm-hmm. from the whether it is economic, political, or cultural. And we have our Al-Azhar, which is a very important institution for all these Islamic countries who look up to our Azhar for education and for scholarships. So when we broaden our foreign policy and we link with strongly with new partners, that is something very important, because we are seeking political support, economic cooperation, cultural exchange, and these three are very important for the future of our foreign relations. Like, for instance, when you need the support of one of these countries, when we are debating a resolution, for instance, for Palestine, and we need the support of these countries. We need, as so many countries, to support our rights of the Palestinians, for instance, in the United Nations. So if we have the backing of these countries, so this is a political support that these countries are giving Egypt. When Egypt is, for instance, chairing or having the presidency of the COP27, we extended the invitation to all these countries, and many of them have responded positively. So because they look up to Egypt as the leader and as having a lot of experience. Egypt has a lot of experience in political, in economic, and in cultural aspects.
Yes. Well, Europe specifically, I mean, when we talk or meet with leaders of other European countries, as you've mentioned, combating terrorism is always high on the agenda, because Egypt is well experienced in this file, and also combating illegal immigration. And Egypt has been really successful in dealing with illegal immigration, and also with dealing and accepting refugees from around the world. How can Egypt's experience and pioneering success in these two files help enhance and strengthen relations with the European continent in specific, since they actually suffer from a lot of the consequences and the repercussions of illegal immigration, and also combating terrorism?
It is high on our agenda, as you know, because we are also suffering from terrorism, whether it is in Sinai, whether it is, happening because of radicalization, because of different interference from powers that are supposed to be or look at on Egypt in a different way, and they don't want Egypt to become a power in the region. So that is why we have been a target for terrorist activities for many reasons. I don't want to go through this, but I know that we have this on the top of our agenda, whether it is in the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We all cooperate in order to fight or in order to also spread the information that we have to our neighbors and to our region, in order to be able to stop illegal trafficking of persons, of goods, of ammunition, of arms, anything, because the borders are porous, and everything is passing through from whether it is from Africa in the south or in the north, in the Mediterranean. So sharing information and sharing experiences with our neighbors, especially Europe and Africa. It is very important that intelligence information and illegal and putting, of course, very, very strong strong directions to stop the illegal trafficking
Yes.
is very important, and it cannot happen without the cooperation between the two sides of the
Yes.
Mediterranean, the north and the south.
Yes. Ambassador Shalaby, you've pointed out earlier towards the Palestinian issue, and it has been an issue for decades, and it's always part of the conversation whenever we meet European leaders or the US administration or Arab and African countries as well. Now, how is how would you describe Egypt's role in mediating and trying to help with the Palestinian issue, since Egypt has its own construction efforts in the Gaza Strip, also the return of Benjamin Netanyahu to the prime minister seat in Israel. How effective and how important is Egypt's mediating role in terms of trying to find peaceful negotiations, peaceful solution towards the Palestinian issue?
Well, we are, of course, supporting the two-state solution. We are pushing for the peace process to start again, but I don't think it will happen now because of what is happening in Ukraine. But still, we are always having on our agenda the Palestinian rights, whether we are talking with the United States or with Europe. In all the consultations that happen, we have the Palestinian rights, and the two-state solution is our choice in order to support the Palestinians. But for instance, now we have seen that the United Nations is playing a role now in order to stop the Israelis from extending the building. They are destroying the buildings, and they are building new residences for the Jews in the same areas where the Palestinians were living. So the United Nations Security Council was debating the resolution to stop this. And I think the United States has taken a very good stance in order to support this resolution. And hopefully that, because I'm sure that Netanyahu doesn't want problems from the beginning of his tenure, his continuous tenure, of course, but at least for now, it is Egypt's role is to mediate and to support the Palestinians in their rights towards gaining their right in
an independent state.
Independent state, yeah.
Well, Your Excellency, Egypt has assumed the chairmanship of NEPAD's steering committee from Rwanda, and it was a unanimous choice by all member states, really culminating to Egypt's leading political leadership and efforts in the development of the African continent. How would you assess this choice by the unanimous choice for Egypt chairing the NEPAD steering committee?
Yes, we assumed the presidency or the chairmanship of NEPAD for 2 years. And actually it is our role now to play, and it has been shown from the strategy that we have also been part of when NEPAD was starting in 2001. When they started NEPAD, Egypt was one of the countries that signed the strategy. And now the president, when he gave the speech, President Sisi, when he gave the speech of assuming the chairmanship, he pointed to a very important points, and that is because, as you know, NEPAD is the economic arm of the African Union. That means that the sustainable development of the whole of Africa, that all of the African countries, is built on the strategy that we are talking about. And this strategy is built on 4 pillars. Reducing poverty, putting Africa on the path of sustainable development, to halt marginalization of Africa in the world, and to empower women, youth, and to do new partnership with other countries, other globe, to integrate African economy in the global economy. So President Sisi have mentioned that there are priorities, and we have to find new initiatives and new partnerships in order to seek financial coverage for the business that we are looking for. If Africa will never develop, will never have sustainable development except if they have investments.
Yes.
Whether it is foreign or local. So to encourage this investment, they need the financial coverage or financial support for these, whether it is from banks or financial institutions, international, of course, or regional. Yes. So what we are looking for is supporting the big projects. And Egypt has shown to the world that, for instance, we have done the hydroelectric project in Tanzania. So this is some of the examples that we are able to do. And there are 2 other projects that we are also supporting very much, which is the linking of the Lake Victoria to the Mediterranean, and also the Cairo-Cape Road. This infrastructure is going to be very important for Africa because it will facilitate the export and import of goods, and also it will empower the African Free Trade Agreement, which is supposed to be this is the slogan of the African Union now. So this year we are focusing on how to put this African Free Trade Agreement into power. So these infrastructure are going to help a lot in order to have free trade and of course free movement of people also. Yes.
Well, trying to activate and implement the free trade agreement among African countries, and these projects that you've mentioned, such as the Cairo-Cape Town road. I mean, Africa is a big continent, and many countries have their own issues. Some have turbulences, some have political instability, some have, I mean, loads of opportunities and loads of obstacles as well. How easy or how difficult will it be to really try and establish and connect all these African states at the same time, simultaneously, because we need all the African states to be on the same page, wanting the same sort of economic and political interests, at a time where we need to be self-sufficient in terms of African self-sufficiency in regards with the energy and food crises.
Yes, but we have the strategy already, and we have the goals. We have silencing of the guns, because this sustainable development cannot happen without peace and security. So,
yes.
And we have the Agenda 2063, that is our goal in order to achieve.
Yes.
We have the 2030 strategy. So we are on the right track, but the problem is that we are distracted because of the international problems that are happening now. For instance, what is happening in Europe. We used to depend on Europe for partnership and for investments, opportunities, but now, for instance, Europe is completely the attention of Europe is diverted completely to the Russian and Ukraine conflict, and they want to guarantee their supplies of energy, of food, more than offering to Africa, of course.
Yes.
So that makes it more difficult for any kind of partnership. They have their priorities, we have our priorities. So that is why, if you read the newspaper today, it says African solutions for African problems. So we have to really look to our resources. We have to look to for our human resources and natural resources. We have a lot. It has not been utilized yet. So why don't we focus more on helping ourselves, in order to guarantee our future, the future of the future generations?
Yes.
We want to focus on the African capabilities.
Yes. Well, Egypt was spearheading the African continent as well during the COP27, and it really worked on trying to secure the financing to combat climate change, because Africa is the continent paying the highest price as a result of climate change that was caused by other developed countries and on other developed continents. How would you say these efforts have really benefited the African continent, and how much do the African states now really appreciate the leading role Egypt is playing?
Yeah, we have done a great deal for Africa in the COP27, and we have realized, or we have succeeded in having this fund for the damages that has been caused. So now it is the implementation, which I'm sure is going to take us also into another step further, especially that time is not in our favor, and also as I said, the global situation is not in our favor also. But we have to continue to pressure the big powers, because they are the ones who are playing the role in the world, like China, India, the United States, EU. They are the ones who should take the responsibility of continuing what we have decided in COP27, and also in continuing the investment and the relationship with African Union, of course. And you have seen many summits that have taken place, whether it is between Arabs and China, or between African and China, or Russia and United States. I think Russia didn't do this year because of what's happening, but the United States have invited all the African leaders, and there was a meeting with the President of the United States. So the big powers are seeking Africa because Africa is still virgin, and it still has a lot of resources. So that is why we should concentrate on developing our national interests.
Yes. Well, other files that have always been on the agenda of the talks, be it with the African continent or the European or American sides, is the files of Syria, Libya, and Yemen. Now, what about the Egyptian efforts trying to deal with the conflicts taking place in North Africa? And it seems that the international community is also interested in these regions and in these files. What are the sort of efforts do you feel Egypt has exerted in terms of trying to find some sort of a political and peaceful diplomatic solution for the situation in Syria, Libya, and Yemen?
What keeps the conflicts going on is the interference of foreign powers. And we have said that in order for the Libyans to take their own future in their hands and to take their decisions, they have all the foreign interference has to evacuate and they have to leave the country in order that the Libyans will concentrate on their future. So in Syria it's the same, in Yemen it's the same. When the foreign interference goes, have interest also. They have a lot of interest in the region, and that is why they clash. And I have to warn from the private companies that they have these Wagner groups that are linked with the Russians, and also there are other groups that are working for the Islamic country, the ISIS, in the Sahel and Sahara, in Mali. In all these countries, they still have power, and they have financing, and they have illegal trafficking. And if Egypt wants to fight and to combat terrorism, they have to. Egypt has to deal with all these, and they are non-state actors.
Yes.
You cannot deal with them in the international law, for instance. You cannot apply international law because they are not following the legal order.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as Ambassador Shalaby has pointed out, it needs a very sensitive balance to lead the foreign affairs and the foreign relations diplomacy with many issues related to the African continent, the Asian continent, the situation with Europe as well as the United States of America. But these efforts have been really appreciated by the international community within the whole world. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank my distinguished guest, Ambassador Souad Shalaby, the former Assistant Foreign Minister. Your Excellency, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Night International. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for joining us.